Hello everybody, and welcome to our student webinar on chart delineation. This week we've got a couple of people helping us out. But first we'll go through the normal stuff that we do. We're going to keep everybody on mute. If you have a question, you can type it in the questions block down at the bottom of your panel there. And we've got a couple of people helping us watch for questions. You can raise your hand during the time that we're open for questions. We're going to ask you to please hold your questions during the student presentations, but we will give you a chance to ask questions. And if you raise your hand, we'll unmute you long enough to let you talk. We do have problems with feedback and background noise, so please keep yourself on self-mute as much as possible once we've unmuted you and you finish talking. You can mute your microphone by touching either one of those little green microphones, the one that's up above the hand or the one that's there by your name. Okay. Eva and I are the facilitators, and our guest presenters are Dorothy, Linda, and Joe.
So welcome everybody. It's Eva talking. I'm glad all of you could come and partake in this webinar. You know, I hope you learn from this. This is what it's meant to do, is to give everybody an opportunity to present to the best of their ability and for everyone to learn from it.
Okay, guest presenters. Dorothy, are you ready?
Sure. Okay. Everything's mostly on the bottom of the chart, so I'm a hermit. I'm much happier at home doing my own thing. I can find plenty of things to do to keep busy. And it takes, I don't know, spiritual things, I guess, are the only things that really interest me enough to get me out of the house. But now that Neptune being the only elevated planet means that I'm not sure that other people really see who I really am. And okay, the planets to the east are except for the sun, let's see, I control my own emotional response because Mars, Moon, Jupiter are on that. That's the west side with the Ascendant. That's the east side.
What's the east?
Yeah, okay. So that means I control my own emotional responses to things and my own drive. The planets on the west are the ones where people tell me who I am and try to tell me where I fit in.
Okay, can we just adjust the way we frame that so
Sure.
that we say on the east there is an independence to you, right?
Right.
On the west you learn through working with others, through others. It's not necessarily that they tell you, it's just that through your involvement with other people is the way you would learn.
Except if I'm so focused on what I want that I don't listen, I just get annoyed.
Well, there you go. I mean, those are your choices. But you see the difference. It's not them telling you or necessarily being in control of your emotions. It's just that one side is a little more independent, the other side, and you can do things alone versus, you know, the other side, which is you learn working with others. It's like the Aries versus Libra, right?
Right.
Basically, that's the difference here. Okay, sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Okay, so Moon next. It's in.
Okay.
It's in Aries, and it's square the Ascendant, which means that I'm a lot of times insecure. There's an insecurity behind all that independence, and And also it tends to poor judgment, jumping into things too fast, restlessness, lack of staying power if I'm uncomfortable. It's conjunct Jupiter, which means I expand things that expand needs to rush. Everything has to be done immediately. The moon's the instinctual response, and my first response is always to do it now. And I don't like to wait.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the moon is bailing Neptune, which means I need to respond to life with universal love and not impatience.
The moon, on an exoteric level, we don't have to see what it's veiling. The moon is just the moon because it represents your moon, your past, your body, your form, your emotions. So we don't have to, at this point, look at what it veils. It's only when it's an esoteric ruler that's when we look at what it veils. Okay? So the moon is just the moon right now.
Okay.
So you've described the moon qualities quite well. The restlessness and jumping in first, rushing, all those things very much would apply to moon in Aries and Jupiter conjuncting that, making that a lot more of all those things.
Do you have a feel for how the moon is holding you back, and do you have a feel for the esoteric energy that might be coming through the moon, or is it at this point just the traditional for you?
Well, that's why I said veiling Neptune. It means I need to respond with love and not with impatience.
Yeah, but
and the keyword for Aries that you're trying to work for, from the plane of mind I rule. I come forth from the plane of mind and rule.
Right.
And it's in your third house.
Well, that comes with Saturn. I was going to talk about that with the Ascendant.
Okay.
So the MC is being Scorpio means I need to regenerate my self-will and let soul lead and follow divine will rather than my will. And the South Node being in Taurus means I need to overcome resentment, not go into myself, and not fear contact, and learn to give of self and to radiate. I think I have trouble radiating. I don't think I let out enough light.
Mm-hmm. Now, the approach that we normally take is, so we look at the moon, and the moon is in Aries. So then we look at, well, what is the ruler of Aries? And we go to the ruler of Aries, which in your case would be Mars. So then we would look at Mars, where it is, how and what sign it's in, what house it's in, and how it plays out in your life.
Okay, well, they're not aspecting it, so I discussed Mars more when I was talking about Saturn, because it aspects Saturn.
Mm-hmm. See, the aspects at this point are not as important as looking at the sun, moon, and ascendant, and we're still not finished looking at the moon, because
okay, well, it's not making aspects to either one of its ruler, esoteric or exoteric.
Okay, but we always look at what is the ruler that rules the moon. And since your moon is in Aries, okay, we would then look at the ruler of Aries.
Okay, Mars is in the first house in Aquarius.
Right.
Which sort of adds to the brush, and also somewhat an aspect of fixity in the direction that I choose to take.
And Aries is, I'm sorry, and Aquarius is also air.
Right.
So it has to do with mind.
Well, it's in the third house also, so it all has to do with mind.
Yeah, so there's a pattern there. There's something that's being repeated. Third house has to do with mind. Aries in in Aquarius has to do with mind, and it's in the first house, which is you as an identity, you know? So there's a lot of mind in a way that we're talking about mind here. So how does your mind really work here?
It's dictated by Saturn and that T-square, which directs it into Libra. But anyway, that's... I'm a mental person, right, and the whole focus of the chart is to transcending mind, to raising it to the higher level to create the Antakarana.
And that's the higher, the esoteric ruler of Aries, of your moon, is Mercury, which is in Gemini and is home sign of Gemini. So that's another air sign that ties them together, both the exoteric purpose and the esoteric purpose. So it will facilitate a little bit of that work to help you raise it. Do you feel that you're working towards that, the esoteric part of it?
You mean Mercury?
Yeah, in the higher mind.
Oh, yeah.
You see, Dorothy, there's a lot of emphasis in your chart on the mind. It's being repeated in several places. So you can see how you were born with a certain facility to be focused within the mind. So then and that's a very important thing to recognize within oneself, that, hey, I am focused within my mind. But then we start to look at how does that mind of mine work, and what am I supposed to do to make it work even better than it already is. So you've pointed out a few things here about this rushing through Aries, and then a lot of it because Jupiter is there right next to the way the moon is, and the moon is restless and it wants to get going, and we always have thoughts in our mind, so you might want to rush the thought out or push out, whatever you're thinking about. You've also got Mars in Aquarius in the first house. So again, that's in air. That is, again, could be contributing to some of the way in which your mind works, which could be, with Mars, pushing forward, rushing forward, maybe not being patient enough in the mind. I don't know you well enough to know if these are your attributes, but this is some of the things that the chart is telling us. And then we just moved over to Mercury, which is conjunct your Sun, by the way, and we haven't talked about your Sun. But your Mercury, your mind, is in Gemini, another air sign. It's in its dignity because it rules Gemini. So that's a really good placement for Mars. So all of this deals with the mind.
It's also ruled by Jupiter esoterically, which is conjunct the moon.
What is ruled by Jupiter esoterically?
Gemini.
No, it's ruled by Venus esoterically.
Oh, Venus. All right. What's
Right.
ruled by Jupiter?
So we'll look at that in a minute. But so we look at your Mars. Your Mars is in Gemini, which in itself speaks to a lot of mind again. So 3 different places we have an emphasis here on mind for you. So in all of that, there is a quickness, there is a rush, there's a multiplicity, there is there's a quickness, quixosity is what I would say to your mind. Is that would you say that that's so?
I don't know about quixotic. That tends to sort of irrationality, doesn't it? It might be irrational to somebody else, but it's not irrational to me.
No, it doesn't mean irrational. It just means a quick mind. Just means quick mind.
Yeah, I can come up with associations that nobody knows what I'm talking about.
Okay. So then, we haven't talked about your Sun and we haven't talked about your Ascendant. Do you want to deal with that right now?
Sure.
Okay, because all of that will play into the way your mind works.
So my son's in Gemini, which is more mind.
Which tends to give someone almost like that, we're not talking race here, but you know what, a third wave kind of feel, you know, in Gemini when the sun is there. And how do you find yourself socially, and do you always find yourself comfortable with people and knowing what to say?
No, I'm not a very good Gemini on the outside, just in my head, just a mental thing.
Okay, well that's good to note. Okay.
But it does. But the sun in Gemini does mean that I need to control the tendency to vacillation and procrastination, and control it with will.
Good points. And you have that will in Aries.
Right, when I want to use it.
Uh-huh.
And in Capricorn.
Well, I haven't gone there yet. Yeah, yeah.
So I'm probably too hard on myself in that respect anyway.
So if we're going back to the sun, so we've talked a little bit about the sun, then you would look at what is the ruler of that sun sign. And the ruler of Gemini, as we've established, is Mercury, right? And Mercury is in its own sign. So it's here you can see Mercury and the sun are one. Now that is in some respects really good. In other respects, there may not be objectivity. You see, sun and mind is very, very good. There's a lot of thinking going on. It would definitely, you know, what do I want to say? It would definitely cause you to be a thinking person, again, with that placement. Now, we find it in the 6th house. And why I bring this up is the 6th house and 12th house is the house of health. So I'm going to ask you, is there a lot of thought to your health, and is your health something that you've had to deal with?
Yeah, I've always been interested in health. I became a chiropractor. I started out originally as a medical technologist. When I started having troubles with my thyroid, I spent a considerable amount of time researching it, and had trouble finding a doctor who knew as much as I did.
Okay, so there you go.
Which isn't hard.
But do you see how that plays into your personality and into your thoughts, the health part of it? And I would ask you something else. What about your nervous system? How is your nervous system, and how is your energy? Because you did mention that you have a square there to Neptune, and Neptune can kind of sap one's energy.
I don't think that I'm nervous, and energy, well, if it's psychic energy, sometimes I don't get excited about things. So maybe Neptune dampens that.
Okay, that's fine. That's good to know, because for some people that would be low in energy, low in vitality.
Unless I get really interested, and then Mars fires me up.
Uh-huh. You see, you've got all that Aries. You've got all that Aries. Yeah, to counteract.
I get obsessed with it.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that you mentioned to us in your application was self-healing. I mean, I know you said you were interested in healing with the chiropractic and some of the other things that you've done, but you also mentioned the emphasis on self-healing, which is also the 6th house. So how do you see that working with you? What are you doing in the way of self-healing?
Well, I do it myself. Yeah, right. I'm the only one that can, with a little help where needed from the outside, and then I have to go out and look for it. And we're getting a lot of feedback from your microphone.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good. Obviously, it applies there. Do we want to move to your ascendant, which we haven't talked about yet?
One thing about the Sun-Earth axis being in Gemini means that ideas need to be validated. I need to learn that there's no one way to do everything. I think I figured that out.
Okay. There's that versatility, you know, in Gemini.
But you have to learn by trial and error, and I find that very obvious in life in general.
Okay.
The key word of life is learning by trial and error. It's a way to set up.
So if we were talking about your sun and we were looking at your sun, so we would look at the ruler of the sun, of Gemini, which we've already said is Mercury. Then we would look at the esoteric ruler of your sun sign, which is Venus. And Venus finds itself in Taurus, you see, in the 4th house, Venus and Taurus, which again is a beautiful placement for Venus because it is one of the rulers of Taurus. It's the exoteric ruler of Taurus. So how would we look at Venus and Taurus? Well, that's one sign of vision. Do you think you have vision?
I guess. Conjunct Uranus.
Again, mind, you see. Both of them could be considered mind signs. Venus, on its higher turn, which is what the esoteric ruler here is Venus, which can give you a synthetic mind, a Venusian mind, and Uranus comes in also with light in the mind. So again, there's emphasis here on mind if we want to look at it that way. There's different ways to look at this.
So I sit at home and study a lot.
Yeah.
4th house.
The 4th house is the home, you know, and it's ruled by Taurus. Would you say you have beautiful things in your home?
No, I'm not really into decorating. I don't have the decorating gene.
What about hands? Do you use your hands a lot?
Yes.
In the earth or in doing things with your hands?
I putter. I don't have room for a garden, but I think.
And even chiropractic is using your hands, is it not?
Yeah. Well, I like to sew and do crafts and make stuff.
There you go. That's
like piano.
There you go. That's all the Taurian energy for you, and it's in the 4th house. It's in your home, within your family, or in your home. You know. Now, I think it's time that we move to your ascendant because we want to give everybody equal time, and your ascendant is in Capricorn. But aside from the keynote, what do you ascertain as your sole purpose?
My sole purpose?
Because that's what the ascendant is. It's your sole purpose.
I wrote down there was a question, what motivates me the most, and I would say progress.
Right.
Making progress on something. So right now it's making spiritual progress. I think that's.
Okay, and what do you want to do with that spiritual progress? How do you see that working out in your life?
Well, after 5 years almost of Moria, I would say service.
Service, okay. And you know what, if you were to look at the keynote, again, of Capricorn, it is, lost am I in light supernal, yet on that light I turn my back. What does that mean to you?
That what I learn I need to share and not keep it to myself to generate more progress.
There you go.
Balance between progress and service.
Yes, I'm going to give you a hand on that because that's exactly what you said. You said service. And that's what this is basically saying to you. That what you gain, what you learn, what fills your mind and your head and everything that you're working so hard towards, you have to find a way to give that back to humanity. It's not just for you. It's so that you can give that back. I turn my back and I save. I offer that.
Well, that's what I've never managed to do yet. I figure out where I fit in or what I can offer.
But you see that is your sole purpose, and you did say that. And you know what? In your own way, I'm sure you do that.
In my own way, I'm sure I wish I did.
Well, you know what to aim for, don't you? You know that's your goal. I mean, that is what you're working toward.
How do you see the ruler, Saturn, both the exoteric and esoteric ruler of your ascendant? How do you see him working out in your life?
Well, that gets into all those squares and stuff that you don't want to talk about.
Let's talk about Aries. Let's just talk about Aries. You said all this.
Saturn is in Aries.
Right.
And the third house, so it's mind again.
It could be mind, but I'm going to suggest that all that rushing forward of Aries and the Mars, you've got Saturn there. Saturn can put the brakes on. It can actually limit some of that. You have all the tools there that you need because it can limit that need to speak out, that need to put your foot in the mouth, that need to rush forward, and you can stop and think, you know, because you've got all that thinking ability. You see?
Well, I think that Saturn being in the third house on with the square to Mars and Pluto, it's all being directed into development of the higher mind. So I need to quit rushing around and worrying about material things and think about what's important and focus on that. That's where progress comes.
All that is true. All that is true, but we still cannot forget about our personality because we're all still integrating our personality. Right up to the fourth initiation, we continually integrate. Integrate. So the Saturn there is your helper. Saturn, remember, is the disciple's friend. And Saturn is so well placed here for you because the tendency for you is to be quick in the mind, to rush forward in the mind, to maybe not think things out. And Saturn gives you structure. Saturn is very structured. It can structure your mind so that, one, you can learn better, two, you can limit that rushing forward. If we're looking just at mind right now, can you see that?
Yeah, I see it squaring Pluto, which is trying to smash the crystallization and open it up to the higher mind.
Yes, that too. That too.
I'd like to say that you have both, as you mentioned earlier, Jupiter and Saturn there in Aries flanking your moon. And one, as you said earlier with your moon, that's the expansion, but that, you know, the moon is the past. In the past you expanded outward, and now Saturn with your soul purpose is bringing you the structure that Eva is talking about. You know, they work together, Saturn and Jupiter. You can't have too much overdoing, but you can't have too much restriction either. It's like breathing in and out. You know, one leads us so far and the other one reins us in. One gives us the opportunities and the other one takes advantage of those opportunities. So the two of them together there in Aries can work together.
Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful setup. It really is, Dorothy. You've got a beautiful setup here. Saturn will put the brakes on this rushing forward and this restlessness and so on, and can give you the structure that you need to build the antakarana, to move to higher mind, to learn, to disseminate the teaching. Saturn here really is quite the teacher for you. It is the ruler of your chart. It's the ruler of this whole soul purpose. So you have to pay a lot of attention to Saturn's role here. So yes, it squares this and it creates a square here, a T-square there, but what is the important thing here with Saturn? Saturn is there to help you get structured, to help that mind of yours become disciplined. Isn't that what we all want to do, is discipline our mind so that we can learn, so that we can then apply what we do learn? It's a beautiful combination, really.
Do you have any questions for us before we move on to Linda, Dorothy? Anything you want to say in wrapping up your presentation?
No, I think the time's up.
Have you gained anything from this?
Um, I gain from doing all the work and looking it all up.
Okay.
Do you understand yourself better after having done that?
Well, what I got out of it was the things I need to work on.
Okay.
And he
That's
was
good.
right. This disciplined mind is what I'm working on, but I already knew that.
Okay. Okay. So again, I would emphasize for you to look at your ascendant and its ruler, Saturn, and in what way, how does Saturn play for you, and what is its importance, and in what way can you use Saturn with all that energy that you have going?
And how does that tie in with the goal of that ascendant, that keynote of Capricorn? Lost am I in light supernal, yet on that light I turn my back. That's the ruler of your chart. That's the keynote of your chart.
Okay, well, that keeps me focused on what I need to do, I guess.
Okay. Okay. Remember, Saturn is our friend. It's the planet of discipleship. And
I
if
always
you
find with Saturn transits that it ends up supposed to be horrible, but it always ends up setting things right in some way or another.
It's horrible for regular astrologers because they don't really understand the importance of Saturn. They look at it as malefic. We don't look at it that way because as disciples, and we are treading the path, we understand that Saturn is our friend. Saturn is so important in our lives on so many different levels.
Right, he brings opportunity, and the two, you asked specifically about how mundane was different from esoteric. They work hand in hand. You have to look at the tests and challenges that Saturn brings, but that's how we learn the most. That's how we grow the most. So esoterically, inwardly, we're growing so much from those outer experiences that we have. Really quickly before we move on, does anybody have any questions for Dorothy before we move to the next one, to Linda? I don't see any hands, so I'd say thank you very much, Dorothy.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Bye. Well, stay on, please.
Okay, Linda, are you ready? I know you have a lot prepared about your ascendant, your sun, and your moon.
Yes, I'm ready. What I have here, I'm not going to be going through exactly like I prepared it, but I'll start with the overview of the big three and then turn it over to you, and I'll just let you guide me. The big three in my chart are Libra Ascendant, Aries Sun, and Scorpio Moon. There's been a great deal of work done over the years to tame the intense energy conflicts, which I now know as quite a few squares and oppositions in the chart, including the Aries Ascendant Libra Sun that squares the Cancer Capricorn Midheaven Nadir axis. I used to be fiery and outgoing and unintentionally insensitive, very impatient, and ricocheted from one extreme to the other. I used to be wild and all out, but that was repressed when I was a child because my parents applied the strict discipline. But when I went out into the world on my own, I made up for it and paid the consequences. Mars rules both Aries and Scorpio exoterically, so some of the characteristics of Aries are the same as those of Scorpio, and they intensify each other. Mars is located in Scorpio in my chart, and that adds even more Martian energy to the mix. The Libra Ascendant energy has toned down that Aries-Scorpio intensity over the years, and I'm a lot more subdued and introverted, almost hypersensitive now, hesitant, discerning, and much more balanced than I used to be. And these are the qualities of the Libra soul, so it seems the purpose of this incarnation is to find balance. Do either of you have anything to add right now?
I think your overview, Linda, is excellent. I think you hit the nail on the head in many areas there. If you would like to keep going with a few more things, please do, and I'd be very happy to comment.
Okay. I have a paragraph about each of the big three, and then I've got an example that I can use how it played out, or you can ask me questions.
Sure, you go ahead with the Ascendant.
Okay. The goal of the Libra Ascendant is to find the balance between the pairs of opposites. That process causes a constant fluctuation of my point of perspective. Sometimes the personality dominates, and other times the soul dominates. That's how I've learned lessons in life, behaving like a pendulum that swings from one extreme to the other until it eventually expends its energy and settles in the middle. Patience and moderation have always been major challenges for me. With the Sun in Aries, I'm very familiar with those qualities because Mercury, Venus, and Jupiter are also in Aries with my Sun. It took a long time and a lot of effort to find some order out of the chaos from the poor choices that I made. I'm convinced it's the Aries Ray 1 quality of will to persevere and endure, and the Ray 7 quality of bringing order out of chaos that are responsible for the fact that I've survived this long. The Moon in Scorpio. In Soul-Centered Astrology by Alan Oken, he writes that the Moon in Scorpio placement indicates that a fierce battle is on for control between the soul and the personality, and that the function of Scorpio on the personality level is to attract those circumstances, especially on the emotional plane of desire, which engage the personality in battle. And that's exactly what has happened. It's an ongoing inner battle with myself. There have been a lot of times when, even though everything in my outer world was relatively calm, the battles in the mental and emotional bodies were so intense that I thought I was going crazy. I couldn't explain this to anyone because I didn't understand what was happening, and doctors just wanted to shove drugs on me. In my chart, the Moon and Mars are both located in Scorpio in the second house, indicating that the battle is in this area of values and sex and money and possessions, gains and losses. And this is exactly where it's all been playing out. Anything so far?
That was, again, very astute and very well assessed. I think you did a super job there. Okay, let's look at the chart now to understand how those energies have attributed to the qualities you've referred to. So if we look at your Ascendant, it's in Libra. And as you said, Libra is to bring balance in the life. But also there's a whole other part to Libra, and that is right relations. That, in my opinion, is even more important than the balance. It's right relations. Not only right relations with others, but right relations with yourself. Librans, more than anything, want this kind of balance in their life, and therefore they tend to overcompromise. They tend to be nice. They tend to not want to confront and to argue and so on. So they need to find this way of being right with themselves and right with others, which you have the perfect balance here. You've got Aries on the other side. Every Libra needs Aries. Every Aries needs Libra. You were born with them in opposition. And that is such a good combination of energies to be able to be willful, to be able to stand, to be able to have that will, and still be able to balance, and to be nice, and to be okay with relationships. So there is this constant, as you said, balancing of the two that needs to happen in the life. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, so you have a lot of Aries because you've got your Sun in Aries and you've got Jupiter right there, and it's in the house of relationship. So if it isn't, if you didn't have Libra rising and you still had your Sun in Aries in the house of relationship, it still would be about relationships. Soul is about relationship. Or soul relates. Soul is the great relator. So you have this automatic built-in need to relate with others. But you need to find the right way to relate. Not just to relate for peace and not just to relate to have your way, which Aries would want to do, and with your thinking capacity there, you know, you've got Mercury there, which is the esoteric ruler of Aries, so you have ideas and new ideas and pioneering and maybe even synthetic thoughts with Venus there. You've got to find ways in which to find that equilibrium between being aggressive with others and being okay with others and still being right with yourself. Okay, so that's mainly the work you've got to do, you know.
Now, one of the things that I thought was amazing when I saw this was not only this really nice balance between the Aries and the Libra there, but the fact that they're in each other's houses. It's like walking a mile in the other person's shoes. And that has actually set the tone for your entire chart. So it's really an affinity with each other, Libra being on Aries' house and Aries being on Libra's house. So that just reinforces, you know, as Eva told Dorothy, the more times something is said in your chart, the more it's reinforcing this theme. You have those huge stelliums in Aries and Libra, but you're no slouch in everything else either, because if we stop for a minute and look at your counts, you'll see that everything is pretty balanced down here in your quadrants. They're all represented. Your hemispheres, they're fairly equally balanced. You and I've traded some emails concerning the fact that you have no mutable and no earth, but you've got everything else going for you as far as that balance that it was so important for you to work on this lifetime, that, you know, you waited until all your planets were in it before you were born.
Yeah. Now, let's add the moon. You described that whole moon stuff and Mars there beautifully. So I won't go into all of that. But you were right in what you said, that the ruler of that sun sign is Mars, and Mars is dignified because it is in Scorpio. So there's a lot of intensity to you and to the relationships you have. So this intensity is constantly there. And again, the Libra is there to help you bring balance into all of that. It becomes very obvious how important Libra is for you in this incarnation. And you can see how all your areas, your three vehicles, are all working and integrating. You've got fire, you've got water, you've got air, you've got all the three vehicles here are trying very hard to integrate, working really, really well with each other, and allowing then the soul, the personality, to shine through the soul quality, which is Venus here for you in Aries. You know, the ruler of your chart is Venus, and Venus is in Aries where your sun is. So you have a lot of gifts here and lots of opportunities to bring the best out of yourself. But it's a good thing that you have recognized the struggles that you've had and what helps you with those struggles. I think you summed that up really well.
Thank you. It's been quite a fight to get to this point.
You know what? It's for all of us, you know. Once we get to know ourselves a little bit better, we realize what it is, what we need to work on, what has kept us imprisoned. And for you, if we look at the moon, and what's kept you imprisoned is that intensity, is that warrior, the fighting spirit. Maybe that is you, I don't know, but maybe that is you. And then you've got to find ways to moderate that, you know. And that's what your wonderful Libra can do. And Saturn is in Libra too. Saturn actually is well placed in Libra because it is one of the rulers, but it's on a much higher level. But again, Saturn wants to put those limits on how you it's karmic. Let me change what I want to say. It's karmic. There's a karma about relationships that you brought with you, and that's one of the reasons that the emphasis for you is all about relationships in this incarnation. It's the house. It's finding itself in an occult house, in a subjective house. Saturn, that is, the 12th house, and yet it's in Libra. It's in how we relate. And then again, your Sun is in a Libra house. How we relate, and Jupiter is in that Libra house. How we relate, and how much of that we do. So then you've got your mind there, and it's repeated again and again, the whole theme here. So I don't want to keep repeating this, but I think you've got a lot going for you in this chart, and if you can work with those energies, it's wonderful.
Right, and you share with your Sun, you share the same keynote that we saw with Dorothy in Aries, you know, esoterically, I come forth from the plane of mind and rule. And then, of course, the Libra one, what is it? I choose the way which lies between the two great lines of force. So using the mind, the higher mind, and achieving that balance, as Eva has been talking about, those are your soul keynotes.
It was the Scorpio Aries lower plane intensities that almost took me out.
Yeah.
It was overwhelming, and I didn't learn to use these oppositions, which I've always seen as a negative thing. Well, not always, but since I've been studying this, I didn't see it as such a positive thing like you have just described, which is quite enlightening. I appreciate that.
Linda, I have a stellium in Libra, and I have been working for so long on bringing more Aries into my life. I have been working on bringing will, dynamic will, standing in my own feet, being more assertive, etc., etc. I mean, it's finally reached a point where I'm okay with that. But boy, did I need a little bit of Aries. So here, you've got it all. You've got both. That's why I say it's just so good.
The challenge is the balance.
Your soul has chosen this wonderful opportunity for you in this incarnation to grow, to put behind you some of that intensity, some of that Martian quality. And Venus is the opposite of Mars. You know, think of that. You came in with all that Martian energy, and Venus, the ruler of your chart, is the total opposite. It's going to bring more, something more docile, more loving, more beauty, more relating for you. Now, like Dorothy, you have a 6th house, 12th house axis here, and that's a health axis. So you did say it almost took you out. So is the health a thing for you as well?
It has been. The nervous energy burned me out many years ago, and I've been running on adrenaline. So it's just recently, within the past 4 or 5, 6 months, that I have started to actually convert from running on fight or flight and holding back to calm down and run on energy, regular physical energy, and building that up. So I've come a long, long way as far as that goes, but a lot of building and balancing still going on.
Mm-hmm. And remember, you got to use your mind here. This is your way out, is to use your mind to find that balance. That's why you've got Mercury right next to Venus, the ruler of your chart, and Venus will help that mind of Mercury, which is, from the plane of mind, I rule, I come forth, and from the plane of mind, I rule. It's in a beautiful place. You can come up with ways and ideas how to keep yourself from burning, Aries, from burning out, from working in that fiery realm. It's good to have fire in the mind because it's active. It's constantly firing new thoughts, new ideas, new innovative ways to... Did I lose somebody here? Hello?
No, it's me.
Oh, okay.
It's me, sorry.
Okay, so yeah, so just use your mind. Use your mind and think things out. Emphasis should be for you right now in your mind, in your thinking processes.
Okay. I also want to point out, a few minutes ago you mentioned about the difficulties you've had, the trials and tests that you've had, and that's a key purpose of Scorpio. You've got Mars there and you've got your moon there, and those are things that you worked through, those tests that you went through this lifetime. And what we do is, the tests that we've mastered this lifetime, we don't have to face them again. Next lifetime we're supposed to pick up exactly where it was that we left off. And you've done the hard things this life as part of working out your whole chart. So those are things that I like to think that we plan on working on, and that's what we bring to our chart. And like you said, it's been a lot of challenges and things, but that's what Scorpio does. He digs very deep and drags things up to the surface so they can be dealt with.
That's really good, BL. And just banking on what you just started here is that with the moon in Scorpio, you've just brought with you that warrior that you were in the past. You were a warrior of some kind, whether male or female, and you brought that fighting spirit with you, or you wouldn't have been born with that moon there, and with your sun in Aries, which also has a fighting spirit. So that is an energy that is not new to you. That is an energy that you have lived with before. And your goal, as has been said in this incarnation, is to calm that so that that fiery fighting spirit will only do that when it's necessary because you've thought it out. Right? You
Right.
see that?
Yes.
Okay.
Does the fact that Pluto squares Mars?
Yeah, it just emphasizes a little bit more. That's all.
Okay.
Pluto can be looked at as well, but Pluto's also there to try to bring it to the surface so that you can see it. And for what you say, you have seen it already.
Yeah.
To bring it to the surface so you can see it in the light of day. And you recognize that. No? See, you've got your, we're not talking MC, but you've got your MC in Cancer. Cancer is very nurturing. So people will see you, people can see you as being a very nurturing individual. Using all your talents and nurturing others.
They have told me I have a very calming, balancing effect on them, which I always thought was funny because I'm the one who deals with all the intensity behind the scenes.
There you go. You see? So it's an interesting combination that we're all made up of. We're all a little bit different, and I mean there are similarities, and yet we're all a little bit different. And it's nice when we get confirmation on how we are, and our chart gives that to us, as does feedback from others.
Well, thank you for a positive view.
Oh, it definitely is positive. I don't know any charts that are negative. Most charts are positive if you know what to look for,
Yeah.
I remember when I first saw my chart and with Michael, I stood in front of the group and I almost was in tears. And I said, that's not me. You put me into one little corner and that's not who I am. I'm a lot more than this. Until I realized what my chart was all about, you know. So, yeah, we all learn. We all learn. So I hope this has been a learning experience for you.
Definitely, yes. Absolutely.
And you come away with knowing what to work toward, what your sole purpose is.
I even saw all these, the big three energies work out as I was organizing this presentation and working up to it, all the emotional stuff, all the mental self-talk and the organizing. It was interesting to see it all play out that way too.
So that was a good process for you by the sounds of it.
Yes, it was.
Good.
So let me ask you this. Do you recommend being a volunteer to your co-attendees here?
I would say definitely yes. Get over whatever is preventing them from stepping up to the plate and do it, because it will expand your perspective on yourself.
Thank you for that feedback.
Is there anything else you'd like us to talk about or look at? And you have a question here, so.
No, I don't have anything.
Okay, then let me go ahead, Vera.
Yeah, I have a question. If you have any comment about the absence of the earth element in Linda's chart.
I'm going to ask Linda that, but just 1 minute. What I want to say is I have something similar going on in mine, and Linda has the same thing I have. She has planets in what we typically think of as Earth houses, so it may not necessarily be an absence of Earth. Practicality and down-to-earthness. But let's ask Linda what she thinks about that, okay? Go ahead, please, Linda.
I actually had the same question, and BL and I did discuss it a bit via email. I thought that maybe it was a lack of being grounded, which I have been accused of not being grounded before. I thought maybe that had something to do with Jupiter in Aries, because I do have really big ideas. People just look at me wide-eyed and think I'm flying around someplace. So it might be just feedback from other people who don't understand how I think that led me to believe that I don't have my feet on the ground. But I think just having Libra as an ascendant and balancing that Aries energy does, like BL said, fill the spot that the grounding earth quality would. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think she's got something in all three earth houses, which, again, it gives her the grounding that she would have if she had earth. So there's different ways of looking at that. Okay? Are we good?
Does anybody else have any questions before we move on to the third presenter, Joe? Okay, are you ready, Michael pretending to be Joe, or is it the other way around?
Oh, it's just some weird thing in my computer. So whatever I show up as today, I'm here.
Oh, good.
And I just want to echo what Linda said about the process being very evocative and encourage people who have been mulling over whether they want to volunteer the value of this process and the insights that you gain from having esoteric astrologers work through your chart with you. You will, I believe, discover something new even if you think you've done it a lot. So I'll just take off, and you can look at my chart there on the screen and see that we need to start with the Leo Ascendant, as it rules the entire chart, as we know. And of course, I must say that the first thing that came to mind as I did this was how these are all thought forms, and a very predominant thought form for the exoteric rulership is that of Leo the lion ruling the savannah. And I always laugh when that image comes to mind because it doesn't resonate with me at all. And maybe we can do a little to diminish that illusion as we look through my chart. One of my major challenges is my mind, and there's Neptune in the third house. And that mind wants to sit and analyze the thought forms and get behind the symbols. And yes, I did go through a period when I was totally mesmerized by Joseph Campbell and really studied symbols, and that was one of the parts of my path. But never mind. Once I did that, the emotions tend to get bouncing around with the thoughts of the past, and I want to make sure that I do this right. And as I was preparing it, I thought, oh, that's that Capricorn moon speaking. If you look over in the 5th house, there is the moon in Capricorn, 1 degree. So let's get on with it. And so there you have the Leo taking over in my mind. And the rulership of that Leo is the sun at all levels. And Neptune, in this case, is probably veiled by that sun. So Neptune needs to be considered, as well as my sun sign, Cancer. It's sitting there in the 11th house. Cancer being ruled by the new moon exoterically, but esoterically by Neptune. So there it is, that elusive Neptune again. Neptune down in the 3rd house is ruled, or it's in Libra, so it's ruled by Venus on the exoteric side and Uranus on the esoteric side. So interestingly, if you take a quick look up in the 11th house with my sun, there's a significance that we could note with this little tiny stellium where sitting Venus and Uranus conjunct. And Uranus is, in fact, sitting in the Aquarius house, the 11th house, which it rules. Mars is there in Gemini, not far away, and I don't want to go too far off into this little stellium, but that Gemini influence is probably another very significant component of the chart overall. But I'm getting a little too complicated, and my mind can quickly complicate just about anything, so we should just make one other quick note about the chart in general, because we're talking about the ascendant. If you look at that ascendant, there you have some kind of serious things for people. Pluto in the 1st house in Leo and Saturn in the 12th house, and they're just kind of embracing that Leo ascendant. So I think that that's a very important consideration in trying to figure out the chart overall. So since there are these 3 important components of the chart, the ascendant, the sun, and that Gemini dominated stellium, I would like to relate the qualities or characteristics as a whole, as it makes more sense, and that came to me as I was preparing for this. And interestingly, that's one of the characteristics of Cancer, seeing the whole, grasping the whole, with Neptune seated there in Libra in the 3rd house, a place of mind. This speaks to mental activity. And it may be very important in my case with this chart to consider the power of the mind. It can take over as well as reflect a very common monastic perception. And I've worked to transform or transmute that for the better term, or a better term for this would be transmutation, given where I am in my development, and try to take this tendency and shift the focus to a higher level of consideration and understanding. An example of this strong mind that I have that is not mentally polarized, because I believe I'm astrally polarized, but is working through to begin to move to mental polarization. When I was very young, I was really good at math, more algebra and geometry than, but arithmetic was very easy. As a matter of fact, learning was really easy for me. I never had to study. I taught myself how to read by just listening to my aunt and reading along with them and my older brother. And they were both voracious readers, and this occurred when I was very ill at about age 4. So my parents, and I think the school actually recommended it because I was in that era of kids where we had huge classes, 50 kids in a class. My parents bought the World Book Encyclopedia with all the programmed instructional guides that were supposed to be good for all elementary school level kids. So when I was 6 and a half and 7, I independently did in my spare time, evenings and after school, I worked through the entire programmed learning packet of booklets in a few months. It was intended to last for years, and my parents were a little bit chagrined because I'd used the whole thing and my brothers didn't have any opportunity to do it. So that's an example of how I was really interested in a range of topics and loved the solitary activity. And I was kind of alone because my best friend who lived across the street had moved away and felt, kind of isolated in a way. The creative imagination, Neptune and Venus in the chart, is very useful, and it's easy for me to engage, and it's helped me over time to develop to a higher level, particularly when I started in esoteric study and practicing meditation. I found the progress really exponential after that time working in group formation, and I move along far faster with group study and contemplation. In my early and adult work life, I really see the 11th house as particularly interesting because every component of my life work, whether it was in early teaching, I was a communication therapist with all age children from preschool through 22, people who were diagnosed with communication disorders. And the work was really done in a team or group effort. You saw groups of kids work with family and teachers in a group setting. And then later on I worked in other settings that were very much group dominated. So I find that this 11th house Gemini was particularly useful for me, and having a quick mind was useful at that time. As a young, and I could just say now, I don't know if Eva and BL, if you'd like to make a comment on any of what I've said so far.
I need to ask something technical, so before jumping into that, just continue, please.
Okay, so this creative imagination demonstrated for me from early on in learning, kind of a facile mind mapper. I had a teacher who, when I was in 7th grade, didn't know what to do with me because I was kind of advanced for the kids in my class and had me do all the bulletin boards using mind maps from science and math and history to create pictures of what we were learning for the other kids. Theater, music, I love novels, movies, fantasy. I had a strong spiritual rather than a religious mind, and I found that I wasn't inhibited as many of my peers were by religious upbringing. I tended to be just fine with whatever came across, but I had a spiritual orientation that my grandmother kind of nurtured for me. I did have some lower psychic experiences, which I understand with Neptune can be something that occurs for people, and have had those during my life, and I've tended to kind of put those out of my mind or quash them because they were more upsetting on an emotional level than useful. Later on in my adult life, I found that I used the creative side, color, sound, symbols in teaching and very much in consulting work during organizational development consulting, which I did for about 20 years, working in a team predominantly with organizations and governmental units having trouble with things. And we would go in, and I was responsible for doing the organizational analysis, interviewing everyone, again, kind of on the communication side, and coming up with a synthesis of what the issues were and some strategies to help them work through it. My moon's in Capricorn, opposing the sun, and this is interesting that, again, that Saturn that sits up on the Ascendant is the rulership on both exoteric and esoteric levels of my Capricorn. And the moon likely veils, yes? Is there someone want to just jump in anytime? And if I'm going too fast, just tell me to slow down.
I want to ask you, have you seen your chart before, and has there always been a Leo rising?
Yes, I have seen my chart before, I was actually in an esoteric study group with some of the Masonic, esoteric Masonic folks, and we wrestled with, we couldn't quite read the birth certificate time, and so we actually went through a process with the 3 different times it could have been because of the minute, and as a group explored that, and then I finally went back and got a different copy of the birth certificate, and we could see that the time was correct for the Leo Ascendant.
Okay, but the reason I'm asking is the information that BL sent me on your birth time gave me, and I put all that information into the program, and it gave me a Virgo Ascendant for you, which shifts everything up a little bit, you know, so that your sun is still in the 11th house, but it puts Mars, Venus, and Uranus up in the 10th house, which I can see, and it gives you a Virgo Ascendant, which I can see for you as well. So I don't know.
I never got a Virgo Ascendant when I did it. I got Leo all the time. There was a difference in the actual minutes from what she gave me, but I never got a Virgo Ascendant.
I don't, if I got the information correctly and if I put it in correctly, I don't know. So let's go with what's here, since this is how you did your work. Although I can still see Virgo as an ascendant for you very strongly. But, hey.
And we can talk, I think, let me just pause and say that's very interesting to me, because one of the interesting things as I've been in esoteric studies and been working with the full moon energies is that, and I'll just state it for everyone, the way it kind of has worked for me is that the Gemini full moon has always been exceedingly evocative, powerful, a lot. But what comes from that experience shows up when in my journals, writing, in my sort of evening review, whatever I do. It shows up for me in actuality in Cancer. The Cancer full moon is kind of a, like going into a lighted globe. You know, the light, it's sort of a lighted house. There's not a lot tangible, practical, you know, doable that I get during that time period. Then I kind of am thrust immediately into the Leo full moon, which has been hugely powerful for me over many years, for at least 15 years. It's just been the most evocative. But the process, or what that brings, always shows up in Virgo. Which is very intriguing. I think the time is correct. Certainly on my birth certificate it was correct, and Michael actually did some rectification of my chart a while back, because when my mother died, which apparently is a time when you can really zero in and make sure that the minutes are correct. So I think the Leo Ascendant is right, but it was very interesting the way that I could come to that conclusion for what it's.
Okay. So let's work with the Leo Ascendant, and I'll put aside, I'm going to have to look at this again and see why I came up with a Virgo, because I mean I had it all worked out as to why the Virgo was so good for you. But anyway, let's
work. That. It's my Gemini showing up. You know, I can play that, you know, both sides of this, anything really.
Right.
Well, and she has the Virgo on 2 houses, so yeah, that's going to flavor, you know, some of what she's doing with that doubled up there. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's look at some of the things that you said. With Leo rising, and you don't relate with the lion, which is fine. The other thing about Leo is all about identity. And it's like, what is my identity in this incarnation? So you've got to come to fully understand who you are, what you are. And that is the purpose here of the Leo Ascendant. I am that, and that I am. So what is that, and who am I really? You know, this is the age-long question that most esotericists ask themselves. So who am I? Who am I? So that would be a really good mantra for you to play with, since the line part is not the focal point here. There is a certain kind of leadership qualities associated with Leo, authority, a leader, and see if that kind of plays into it. If you have what I see here in this chart with Pluto, which is exactly the same degree as your ascendant, there would be a tremendous amount of magnetism to you. And you have to ask yourself, do I have that kind of magnetism? And it can be interpreted in a variety of different ways. It could be the magnetic quality that you stand out in a group. You know, when you speak, others listen to you. You know, there's that, like many actors and actresses, when they speak, there is that quality. We look up at them and we're aware of them. It's a very Leonian quality. Having Pluto on the ascendant is very magnetic. Okay, so that's one thing.
Let me just, I think, you know, some of the notes that I might share really resonate with what you said. When I looked at the Leo qualities, I found, you know, I'm very independent. I am a protector of the pack. I'm very protective of, and I will stand for those that are in the pack, in the group. I have a very positive and kind of a sunny disposition. I smile a lot around in the world, and I think that that's a Leo quality. I do have that magnetic quality. I can attract people to me in the stage and theater work in high school, college, and later in community theater and club and cabaret. My husband and I, when I was in my 20s, we were a musical duo and we performed. And I did have that sense that I could command the stage. Mm-hmm. And I have been told that I wield power. And I'm not as aware of that, and I think this, your counsel to really look at it is a good thing, because I usually hear about it after the fact, and it's not always a good experience that somebody's had. And I have you know, some reticence about admitting it because I don't recognize it as much. And the persuasiveness, that magnetism with that Pluto there, I was very active in forensics in high school and college. I was a leader of our local teachers union, very politically active in my 20s and 30s with the nuclear freeze movement and the attempts to pass the Equal Rights Amendment. So it was only after I got disillusioned that I left the field of education, I kind of went into a facilitation role in philanthropy. And because of that, I had to assume a more neutral role, working with social justice organizations as a facilitator for funders and with the independent sector. But, you know, I've done, when I was in that era of my life, the 30s and 40s, I did public speaking, you know, 500 people in a group. It doesn't faze me to do that. So I'm not drawn to do it. I actually have always wanted to kind of step back, and I think, you know, when you look at the keynotes, maybe my Cancer blending that cardinal water energy with the Leo fixed fire and the strength of a Capricorn cardinal earth moon, as I look at the key words, and the word said, let other forms exist, I rule because I am, and then transitioning, trying to move that to the I am that and that I am, the placement of these planets up in that southeast quadrant, that upper left-hand quadrant of the chart, has really facilitated this transition, being out in the world, which is that quadrant, and focused on the I am that, which is individualization. That has shifted now, and integrating the that I am I, this spark of divine consciousness, integrating it into a greater whole where that Cancer facilitates that for me in a way. So as much as the Leo would suggest I am, just being the spark or the cog or the atom alone in the greater, you know, family, community, whatever, level of consciousness, the whole is always present in my consciousness. I guess there's no better way to say it. It's a bit odd because at being aware of the divine spark, there's also this awareness of all these, nested successive globes where the permeable membranes are, I'm aware of that. I'm aware of those globes and the movement of energies in and out of it, and the consciousness of moving in and out of those has grown. It certainly isn't highly refined, but it gives me a sense of how the Leo Cancer energies may be working together. And life experience has certainly pushed me in that direction as the,
Now, see, that was
pushed.
You see, that was one of the questions I was going to ask you, and you just answered it. So let me tell you what the question was that you just answered, was how you thought your sun and your ascendant were working out, because, the sun and the things that you were just talking about, the sun in Cancer, Cancer being the mass sign, and the 11th house, as you told us earlier, being the house of community and of group, and then the Leo ascendant, the sun at the higher level is probably veiled by Neptune, and Neptune is both the esoteric ruler of your sun, and then it would be the esoteric ruler of your ascendant as well, if it's veiling. So there is a connection between the two of them, and that explains why you're able to do what you just said, and they are in fact working together in some ways.
And
Yes.
that Neptune square my sun also has, I think the life experiences that I've had have really, it's really pushed me to assert that in relation to the ascendant. I don't know any better way to say this.
Well, that's the tests of the crosses, the experience that we gain from the stresses that they bring us. So,
Wouldn't that Saturn so close to the ascendant kind of put a damper on some of that Leo stuff?
It probably does to a degree. Sure, it certainly limits a lot of that Leo expression to a degree, yes. And there is a karma there, you see. It's in the 12th house.
I have to affirm that it's very significant the way karma has played into this in my life. The Saturn as a karmic component is huge. And I can't give enough examples of how that works out. It's as almost, I can't say it any better way than saying this, the opposing sides, that duality, the squareness, whatever that is. The opposing sides come together at a karmic moment, where the relationships and the components of the moment, there's been something in my consciousness that has always said to me, that is what it is right now. That is what is moving you forward to the next moment. It's there's no other way to express it.
I also noticed that Venus is the final depositor esoterically of all the planets, so that kind of brings soul into that picture too, doesn't it? That the whole thing's being run by the soul. When you talk about karma.
Well, we haven't looked at dispositors, and I don't know if the group will understand that, so that might be so. I mean, I haven't gone through that.
Well, thank you. That's a really good thing for me to consider, and since we're not going to delve into that too much in the group, why don't I just give you a couple comments that I put together on soul purpose, because I was really fixed on that and wrestled with it in the presentation, and because so much of my Cancer sun seems to come through in my examples and life experience. So, you know, when I reflected on it, just let myself free to say, okay, what is the soul purpose? I came with these words. You know, it's being the sounding board, a buffer, kind of an intermediary, a friend standing with, a teacher, a therapist, an analyst, an ally, astute observer a lot. And it was all in the midst of healing and change, and kind of in the context of contributing to a larger purpose. I'm very quiet and supportive, but open when it's demanded of me. And I usually prefer to be in the back executive or facilitator function to help others along rather than myself. And so the motto that came forth as I was just considering this was to be always with and never do anything to or at unless it's just in the moment alone. And that's where I find the negatives kind of showing up. It's that sense of, oh, I have to stand alone, I have to be by myself, I have to figure this out alone. Difficulty expressing emotions or asking for help, kind of being my own worst critic, turning things inside on myself. I am so patient that it is almost a fault. I can stand with people till their death, and have done that. It's an interesting component. The Cancer sun probably relates a lot to the interplay there, because there's that quiet, nurturing, caring sensitivity of the Cancer that can be very introverted and being closed, kind of paralyzed, kind of in the shell of the concrete mind at times, suppressing emotions in the self, and yet encouraging emotional expression in others. So that's how that interplay might play out, and you can see where I may come up with a soul purpose that's kind of understated because of this wrestling of the Cancer sun with the Leo Ascendant.
Okay, Joe, you've got a question?
Oh, I was going to say you're also talking about that balance that Venus is the relationship with others, so you're kind of creating a balance between your own individuality and letting the other person's individuality shine out.
Yeah, I think that's very true.
I'd like to go back to something you said here, and you hit the nail on the head, that, oh, look at that, I can actually move this around. That sun in Cancer and the Leo Ascendant are really quite opposite in their energy. On the one hand, there is this protective shell, as you mentioned, that is around the Cancer. Cancers don't really, they're not out there, if you know what I mean. They're a little inhibited. They're a little shy, and they're a little, what's the word, sensitive. You know, that sensitive causes them to protect themselves. Then there's the Leo. The Leo wants to just shine in the world and wants to lead and wants to, you know, be out there as either a leader or authority or whatever. So there's contradicting energies here, and if you can get them to work well, that is excellent. The other thing that you said, and I want to go back to, is Saturn and Leo is loneliness. Is it loneliness or aloneness? And you did say you realize you've got to do things alone. That's Saturn and Leo as well. And it's in the subjective house. So there's a lot of having to come to terms with, you know, having to mull it over, having to come to terms with it. It's not, it has nothing to do with others. It's all about you know, taking it in and brooding over it and contemplating, and even your mind is there. So there's a lot of internal, you know, workings on this. It's all in the 12th house here of subjectivity.
And your term brooding, that is a pivotal term on the subjective level. It is a deep brooding.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's the interplay then, you know, when I think of the Capricorn moon, the interesting component that has actually assisted me a lot, I think, in coming through my life and working toward the integration of those opposing energies of Cancer and Leo, had a lot of responsibility in early childhood. That discipline was kind of embedded in it in a very, caring, kind of custodial way with adults, very tangible ways. But it was felt on an intangible level with me. The expectations were so high to perfect concrete expression in all levels of daily life and educational endeavors that a lot of people would have thought that they looked at our life that it was very tough. But, the way that it was positioned, it was always kind of done silently and with a grace and humility that we absorbed as children. It became very easy for us to help and be helpers with others. The underlying theme was that it was never okay to be better than anybody, though. It was just you had to focus on surpassing expectations. So it was always an individual. You had to individually deal with it. It wasn't that you were better than anybody. It was I remember my grandmother sat and, literally, I was probably 4 years old, and she said to me, "You're given so many gifts. You have everything. And so you must always remember that you must use those gifts to help other people. You have to make their lives better, and so much the better if they aren't even aware that that's your purpose. So there's so much to do. Just get on about doing it. Don't worry about, shining," which is an interesting message because I was,
especially with the Leo ascendant, that played so well for you because of the Leo ascendant.
And Saturn there in the 12th on the Ascendant. But hey guys, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Vera has had a question for you for a long time, so let's let Vera ask.
Just looking at the chart, that the Mars and Venus are not aspected, and two other planets as well. What is the significance of that?
I'll let the esoteric folks deal with that.
Well, an unaspected Mars is an important thing to notice, and it means that it can be out of control, that she needs to watch her emotions, that she has to watch her tongue, or the way things come out of her mouth, because it's unaspected. So there is nothing there to create a relationship with it. I don't know if you have encountered that, Joe, or not, but, you have to think first.
It wasn't my way past the age of, let me share some clear memories that might put that into perspective. I had a year older close relative, like a sibling. We were, for the most part, raised together, and this person was diagnosed with cancer when I was born, and went through radiation therapy, which caused very severe complications throughout her life. So from the time I was probably a year and a half to 2 years old, I was very aware of the hardship on her body and aware of how she was struggling with this. And what happened was that it really shaped the way that I communicated. I was her companion a lot of the time. I was there to help her, to kind of teach her along. I was with her when she was bullied and shamed by other kids because of her her face was distorted because of the radiation therapy that affected her hormones. I mean, it was a very powerful childhood experience. And there were others along the way. There was a lot of opportunity to kind of serve and heal. I'm going to turn off a little noise in the background. You have to remember to turn all the sounds off that are going to come in your environment. I apologize. So, there's kind of a long list, but it's interesting because the way that hardship, and I don't know, it led me to, I wanted to be a physician when I was young. My father had a terminal illness. that affected us from the time I was 9. My dad died at a very early age. He was just 50. So that actually taught me a lot about holding things in, and I think that probably, instead of spitting things out, I think that holding in the emotions and controlling emotions became the major challenge.
Okay.
It's in the 10th house, and I don't know. I've never been told in any work situation, and actually my family has encouraged me to speak more, because I'm probably one to be less likely to say something than say something.
Interesting. I'd like to go back in the chart to Sun. Ruler of the Sun is the Moon. So we follow the Moon, and we find that it's opposite the Sun. And for those of you who are listening to this, I think that Joe already knows that. When we have the Sun and the Moon in opposition like this, that means that Joe was born during the full moon, which would also mean that during full moon times you are probably more heightened and more affected by full moons than the average person, because you were born during the full moon, right? And immediately it affects, the moon is always opposite the sun during the full moon, so it has greater impact upon you. It's a good thing to continue with your full moon meditations, obviously. So we look at the moon. The moon is in Capricorn at 1 degree. So you have brought into this incarnation your past. So you were some kind of an important figure in the past, maybe a matriarch, maybe an important somebody or other, that within children even, or within family, and you brought that in with you. Would you say that even in this lifetime there's a certain matriarchal role that you play?
Oh yes, very much so.
Okay, well, it shows that with the moon in Capricorn. Now we know we're not going to emphasize the moon in this lifetime, right? But we are aware that these are things we have to let go of somehow. That's not where the goal is. The goal is to serve in some capacity, and not just family, right? It's to serve. It's to serve, whoever and whatever circumstances we find ourselves in. And I know you do that. But I'm pointing this out because I have the moon at 1 degree Capricorn as well, so I understand that. Okay. So the sun and moon are in opposition, and then you have the esoteric ruler of the sun being Neptune, and that's already been discussed, that Neptune is now doubly important, because not only is it the esoteric ruler of your sun sign, it's also the esoteric ruler of your ascendant. So Neptune is a line through your emotions, your astrality, right up to Buddhi. So there would be the ability to reach archetypes and to reach symbols, which you have talked about. There is that, there is that link to Buddhi. There is the openness to maybe even, as you said, psychic experiences, and creative imagination is probably very powerful for you. And to continue to work with your creative imagination, because visualization, as the Tibetan has told us, is a very important thing that we all need to work on. And that probably is not a hardship for you. So I would say continue working with that, because obviously these are gifts and abilities that you have that you should continue to expand. Okay? That's one area I wanted to touch on. And the other thing is the ruler of the moon, which we've already spoken about, is Saturn. And Saturn being right on your ascendant also plays a very important role. So we look at all these important planets in the chart, and we try to understand how and what way they play out for us. Okay? Saturn can be also considered a mind planet, which it often is. It's a disciplinarian. It can discipline you as an individual. And I know you are in the work that I've seen you turn out. There's a structure and a discipline to who you are. So with that being opposite the sun and the moon, it automatically would have a great effect on your personality because it is the ruler of your moon, and the moon and the sun here work together. That's all I really wanted to add to this. Maybe BL has more to say here.
No, I think Joe's covered it pretty well, and then you, and we're running a little over time. Is there anything else you'd like to say, Joe, before we wrap this up?
No, this is just great. Thank you all. Thank you for your questions, and I appreciate all the comments. It's very, very important.
I really appreciate that you guys stepped up to be the first volunteers. That's always going to be the hardest. Now everybody else knows what to expect when they do the same thing. Okay, so any other questions then before we move on? Any questions for Eva or myself or any of the other presenters that we had? Dorothy or Linda? Okay, the next webinar, remember we're alternating times. 1 month is a Saturday, 1 month is a Sunday, back and forth at these weird times because we've got so many webinars going on. So our next one.
Friday, today's Friday.
Yeah, today's Friday, but our next one is going to be on Saturday.
I know, and the one after that, will that be a Friday or a Sunday?
Yeah, it'll be a Friday.
Okay.
Yeah, so next time is Saturday, 6 September, 3 p.m. GMT.
So for those of you that are in North America on the East Coast, it's 11 o'clock in the morning, correct?
Yes. And for those in Australia, it's like midnight or 2 a.m. or something awful for you, and I apologize for that.
Webinars have become the thing these days, and everybody is offering webinars, or not everybody, but a great number of facilitators here are offering webinars, which really curtails the availability of time. So we try to squeeze it in and make it all work.
And we have some other faculty webinars that we have to get together and work things. We do a lot of work as a faculty together, so that cuts into it. Okay, we've got a question here. Oh, we've got a thank you for everybody's participation in this. So, this time around, I'm not going to include the slides. It's just the charts of the 3 people that were really important, and you saw them up there for many, many minutes as they talked about them. You can catch them in the recording that will be available, but we won't have any attachments. Okay, and for those of you who are thinking about volunteering, we've already posted the stuff that you need to send us. Here's some more of the information. If you want me to, I can post the information again.
I think you should. I think it can be posted again on the Student Union, and okay. They can receive that again. I think that's a good idea. And post your email and the time of the next webinar, just so that if they can make it, this is a good time to volunteer.
Okay. All right. I got a question on when in October. I think it may be the 1st. I don't have my stuff handy to look at. I will give you plenty of notification. I'll let you all know what's going on. I do want to say we've talked about a couple of things in here in this webinar and the last webinar. You just can't not talk about some of this stuff. And in the October webinar, we're only going to do 2 charts because we're going to add the nodes in there, and we're going to add Chiron, and we're going to add the rays. That's what we planned on doing. We planned on doing several webinars with just the basics, which is all we've been doing so far, and then add a little bit, and then we'll do a couple of more with the nodes in Chiron and what we've got going. Concentrating still on the big three. Those are the most important. But it helps to know the rays and the nodes, as you've heard, people have been talking about them, so we want to be sure that we add them in there. Okay, so I'm getting ready to wrap everything up. I'll give you more information on when in October, and I'll send an email shortly for the people that we want to work with come September. Okay. As the ladies can attest to, we did a lot of behind-the-scenes work getting people ready for this particular webinar, and we'll do that with each and every one of you that volunteers. Okay, so any other questions or anything before we say goodbye to everybody? We had, on both sides of the house today, we had about 12 people, and I want to thank everybody. Okay, I'm 2 people. I'm signed on twice, but we had a good showing. Thank you guys, and especially thank you to the presenters.
Yeah, thank you all for all the good work you've done, and thank you for those of you who have shown up. It shows that you are interested, which is a good thing. And let's move forward from here on.
Thank you so much for this.
You're very welcome. It's our joy. It really is. We love doing this. We really do. And I'm speaking for BL because I know she loves doing this.
Yes, as you guys can see how many emails you got from me, I'm kind of attracted to this kind of stuff. I buried them in emails.
Okay, all. Thank you again. Time to sign off.
Okay. Good night, everybody. Good morning. Good day. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.